Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and however you are listening to this episode, it's mighty fine to have you here. This is the companion podcast to the Cath Possamai episode that went live this week. On this episode, I am joined by Stu Trevena. Both Stu and myself have worked with Cath, so we got a little bit of insight, and we just wanted to have some reflection on the conversation that I had. So enjoy the podcast. Welcome to Leadership Bites with your host Guy Bloom, a leadership podcast, conversations, just me talking and occasional interviews. Check us out at livingbrave.com, and when you enjoy the episode, subscribe and tell everyone. So, Stu, good to have you on this episode. How are you?
Good, very good, thank you, and good to be back.
I know, I'm feeling the world trying to get going. This is our effort towards that.
It does seem to slowly start coming back a little bit. Let's see what the next few weeks and months bring.
And I'm going into offices at the moment. It's just me and the CEO, which is kind of weird. But there we are. So let's talk about the Cath Possamai episode, which happened last week. I know you've listened to it, and I know you've worked with Cath as well. So it'd be great just to get some of those initial thoughts from you on hearing Cath on the episode.
You're right. So I have spent time working with Cath and working with her team and her organisation. I think what really stands out when you listen back to the podcast is, based on experience and kind of seeing Cath operate firsthand, is you get a real consistent, authentic version of Cath that shows up. And what I mean by that is, if you heard Cath talk to her senior leadership team or anyone within the organisation or her military counterparts or the podcast that you've just done, you get a real sense that this is the real Cath that shows up to every one of those interactions. And I do think that can sometimes be a rarity, where you kind of see a senior leader, particularly at CEO level, where there's almost a bit of not a caricature, but a slightly different version that might show up, when we're addressing the organisation versus when you have that one-to-one conversation. But with Cath, it's completely consistent, completely authentic, and probably one of the reasons she gets such the accolades from within the organisation that she does. I think when you spend time in there and you speak to people that have an experience of her, she's very highly spoken of. And a lot of people within that organisation actually attribute the success that they've seen down to Cath coming in and modelling some of the things that she talks about. So yeah, really consistent. Just a great listen as well.
Yeah, I think there's something that really strikes me about Cath, as you say, that there is this sense of the individual in front of you is going to be the individual that is everywhere else. And that's important, because I think what it does is it instills a sense of trust in her that says, oh, this version of you will be present in other places. So you're not going to say something different somewhere else. I can trust in what you're telling me because the story of you is consistent wherever you go. So if you tell me, hey, okay, listen, that stays with me, I believe it will do.
Yeah,
those kind
absolutely.
of things.
Yeah, and I don't even think that internal dialogue of processing what's going on is probably happening. There is just that feeling of trust and connection to who you've got. I genuinely believe we're very fortunate we get to go into lots of different organisations, and I think the recruiting group is one of the most complex that I've ever studied for lots of different reasons. I think in terms of a leadership requirement, it's exceptionally challenging, but also the work that they do. There's a whole military culture and there's a civilian culture that are coming together as one. You have a partnership, but you also have commercial obligation to provide the right number of candidates that are being recruited. You have the media are always looking at it. You have politicians, all eyes are always on it. And it is incredibly it's a fascinating organisation.
And the social media as well, right?
Yeah, it's social media, the advertising campaigns, all out there, right? What I think is when you hear on the podcast talk, the narrative that she gives, it doesn't seem that it's that challenging. And I don't mean that she brushes over it or there's any kind of sense of naivety about what's going on. But I just think the way that she articulates it, it's like, yeah, we've got the challenges, but it all sounds doable. It's within our gift that do this. Did you get that?
It really does, and I think that is something about somebody who is able to look at complexity and see a route through it and not always know what the answer is. But I think with Cath, you've got somebody that is able to do two things. Number one, she's able to have a strategy because she needs to know where she's going and she needs to galvanise others around her to want to go there. But I think the other thing she's very good at doing is, because she is plain speaking and she doesn't dress things up, I get this sense of her, and I've seen her being very good at dealing with the thing in front of her. And I think that's where sometimes leaders are good at doing one or the other. They're good at doing the big vision, but they often let the micro go, the stuff that needs to be handled now so people can feel that they can trust in the moment, is usurped by yeah, but don't worry about that because we're going there. So they use the dream as a kind of a way of galvanizing. And then there are others that are very good at dealing with the in the moment stuff, but they're constantly firefighting. And so people feel they're on a treadmill and they're never ultimately aiming at something.
Yeah, right.
And then there's that capacity to do both. Now, of course, there are people around that can do it, but it is a rarer skill to be able to hold both truths and get people to believe in both. I know I'm asking you to do this, and I know it's painful. That's where we're going, and your trust in me is one that I can generate because of the nature of me, that you're willing to put in that work to get some wins, to get some belief that this is going to happen, which builds some momentum, and she gets that. And I think that's what's outstanding, I think.
It's having both in balance, right? It's that future state that we're trying to get to, as well as the here and now. I think one independently, you're either really busy kind of in the here and now, but we're not sure where we're going, or the other one really sure where we're going, but we don't know how we're going to get there. Those two are almost there in balance. And I think that really came out for anyone that listened to it, hearing about the success and the various indicators of success that they've had in that time, but talking about the what next as well. But when she talks about the what next, it's a real, I could get behind that. This does sound exciting. When she says exciting, it really does sound exciting. I would be part of that. And I think there's something about how she articulates that message from a genuine feeling of excitement and a genuine feeling of wanting to make a difference in what the future state could be.
Kathy's one of those people that has the capacity to give you a sense of, even though I'm not going to do your job, and even though I'm not going to interfere, I'm going to understand it. And then when I've understood it, I'm going to give you a sense of my energy and my output. So even though you know I'm not doing what you're doing, you'll know I'm busy, not in disregard to anything else. I'm not doing stuff that's blowing smoke up somebody's backside over here, and I'm not trying to manipulate the press over there, and I'm not playing. You don't see that kind of Machiavellian, oh, well, if you're doing that to everybody else, I wonder if you're doing that to me. Mm-hmm. And actually what you do is, back to that point of the who you have in front of you is what she is. You see her holding space with the press. You see her holding space with her decisions. And that says, oh, there's an honesty and an integrity. So even though she's not wearing those, on a T-shirt, so to speak, I think they start to really resonate with people. So yeah, I definitely see that.
Couple of great stories that she shares. She was saying that her military counterpart just changed. Previous guy, General Paul Nansen, now has somebody else in, and she said that at the early days we've sat down already and spoken about things like how we like to receive feedback, contracting with each other about maybe when things aren't going quite as well as we'd like them to, what are we going to do in those situations? What's the conversation we're going to have? And we were literally just before we started recording this saying, sometimes we find that at senior levels. Sometimes it doesn't matter how senior you go. Sometimes the conversation that really should be had isn't happening.
I've got a situation right now where I've got 3 senior people in an organisation who have let something lie. They haven't dealt with it. I've come along to do some diagnostic and insights and gone, have you 3 had this conversation? No, we haven't. Okie dokie. Well, we can't do anything else until you've had it, right? Yeah. Can't we just? No. Oh. And it's this classic capacity to face into those real truths. But I think that's it. Her sitting down with the next person and saying, listen, you're going to have a different version of what Paul wanted. You're going to have a different outcome that you're looking for, and you're going to handle things in a different way. So before we get going, let's get all that stuff out. That's massively important. And it's a cliche, contracting and making sure that you've understood each other. It's so easy to say, but very often they're done in a very superficial and glib way. Not a vision statement, and right, we all agree that then. But actually, with Cath, what you're going to get is that more, how do you like to receive feedback? How do I talk to you when things... She will go deeper, not for the sake of going deep, but for the sake of connection and getting it, because, hey, as you said, something's going to go wrong, right?
And I think it's that, how many times you hear it, as a senior team, we know where we stand with each other. Do you? Or do you have a perception that you do? But where Cath says it, I think they genuinely do. But I think it's that the fact that she will say it on a podcast, that happens. We know that would have happened. But also I think it's demonstrable. People see that happening. I think she talks about empowerment within the organisation. And I think empowerment is probably for another time. We talk about empowerment. I think a lot of organisations have the intent to empower people without necessarily the actions or the tasks or the how do you do that. And part of the how you do it is demonstrating the ask. And I think that it's just another great example of it. I think as a wrap-up summary for me, to listen to this, I think it is the most fascinating organisation that, quite frankly, I think others would be quite intimidated to sit at that level to run because of how many things are moving on around it. So I think at an organisational level, it is fascinating. But hearing how Cath navigates it, some of her views, there's so much value, I think, in anyone just kind of pausing for a little while and getting that bit of insight.
I do like what you mentioned, which is this whole idea of the old Crocodile Dundee thing. That's a knife. No, this is a knife. And I think when people go, oh, you don't know how difficult it is here, I go, well, listen to this first and then tell me if it's more complex than that. No, it isn't. No, I didn't think it was.
Okay.
So,
should we crack on?
Should we crack on then, mate? There's something.
I'm not going to lie. I might have even used a very similar line since working in there as well. But
We're busy here.
Yeah.
No, you're not. You're not.
Let me show you busy.
Yeah, exactly. Listen, it was a great episode. She was an absolute joy to speak to. She continues to be, wherever she goes and whatever she does, she's going to have a massive impact. Just looking forward to following that story and seeing where it goes. And I'll pick up with you in due course on the next episode of whatever it is that we do.
Great. I'll look forward to it.
That's it. Subscribe so you keep updated on new episodes. Visit livingbrave.com if you want to connect with us and find out more. This has been Leadership Bites. See you soon.